What's up everybody, Sean here, and thank you for joining me. Now this one has been a long time coming. As some of you already know, I am a big fan of field watches, and while I do have some from the likes of Orient Star, and the iconic Seiko SARB017 Alpinist, the Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic 38 is the one that actually stands out the most to me. Out of all my field watches, it is actually the one that spends the most time on my wrist and is in fact somewhat a grail of mine. So before I tell you why, let's just quickly run through the specs of this watch. So we have a case size of 38mm, a lug-to-lug distance of 46mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The thickness of this watch is 11mm in a stainless steel case with a sapphire crystal. On the back, we have an exhibition case back showing off an automatic H10 movement that hacks and hand winds and has a power reserve of 80 hours. This watch has a water resistance of 100 meters and it retails for $802 US or 1050 Singapore dollars. So without a doubt, the Hamilton name is synonymous with military issue watches, as it was one of the original manufacturers of standardized military watches for the US Army in World War II. While it is no longer American owned and is now considered a Swiss brand owned by the Swatch Group, their history remains intact and is still very much a part of their DNA and their marketing. Although not the closest model to the original World War II era watches, the Khaki Field Mechanical takes that spot. The Khaki Field Automatic is very much an evolution of the original 34mm field watch, where it was originally a manual wind with a completely brushed metal case and a mineral crystal. It is now updated with automatic winding, a sapphire glass crystal, and a mirror polished bezel that is more suited to post-war office applications than rocky fields. Do not be fooled by this though, as this is still a very capable field watch and one that I have been putting through the ringer over the past year. As the name suggests, we have a case that is 38mm in diameter. There is a larger 42mm version, but because Hamiltons tend to have pretty long lugs, many people with smaller wrists like myself will probably struggle to pull it off. This 38mm version is perfect for those with smaller wrists, as the lug-to-lug distance is only 46mm as opposed to 52mm on the larger version. One interesting thing to note though is that although it is a slightly thicker 11mm than the mechanical version that comes in at 9.75mm, the added thickness actually helps it to wear smaller, as it gives the lugs a more angled down effect as opposed to a flatter shape on the mechanical. The finishing on the case is mostly brushed with the exception of a mirror polished bezel. This is often a point of criticism, and I can totally understand why, given how easily it scratches. It really does, as it is supposed to be a tool watch. I personally like this though, as I feel it gives a more officer's watch kind of feel, something a bit more dressy that can be worn in the office but is still perfectly capable of getting down and dirty out in the field should the need arise. Not to mention, the rugged and worn look that it creates over time really gives the watch a very personal feel, almost patina-like if you are into that sort of thing. No crown guards here, just a large, easy to use signed crown thanks to its size and flat coin edge. This is a push-pull crown, not a screw-down crown, but that is fairly common for field watches. It still manages to achieve 100 meters of water resistance, which is pretty adequate for a field watch. While I have not gone actual swimming with it before, I've not gone swimming in a long time really, it's been exposed to running water, rain, engine oil, radiator fluid, and etc. and has remained unfazed all this while. The watch is topped off with a very elegant domed sapphire crystal that flows down nicely, joining a tapered bezel. The crystal does lack anti-reflective coating, which is another common point of criticism, especially on a field watch. However, like the polished bezel, it does add some shine to the watch, putting it on the more dressy side of things, along with that polished bezel. Again, some may like this while others may not. You pick your poison. I personally have not had any major issues with reflections and legibility, and I attribute that to the dial, which I will explain in a bit. Lastly, on the back, we have an exhibition case back displaying the ETA-based H10 movement and decorated rotor. Perhaps not the most common for a tool watch, but it does follow the dressier design aesthetic of this watch. Now at first glance, the dial may not seem particularly sophisticated. However, if you look closer, you realize that quite a lot of work has actually gone into making it. While the true originals had a plain matte dial, this one actually contains 3 different finishes. First, we have the outer minute track featuring a smooth matte black surface with a printed chapter ring. Moving further in, we have an hour track that is finished with radial grooves cut into it and loomed hour markers printed on. I mentioned earlier about how legible this watch is, and that is largely because of how well these radial grooves capture and reflect light at a different angle from the rest of the dial. This creates a strong visual separation that makes the hour markers stand out even in bright light despite the lack of AR coating. Moving in right to the center, we have the inner dial where 24-hour markings and the Hamilton script are printed onto a subtle sunburst finish dial. I think this section really helps to complete the watch and give it a subtle hint of elegance in an otherwise standardized design. This will admittedly not be everyone's cup of tea, as I know that there are plenty who would prefer a more rugged and simple utilitarian design, but for someone like me who enjoys hints of elegance and finesse in whatever category of watch, this dial is quite a standout in its category once you've taken a good look at it. The date window on this watch is also well positioned and well finished. It features beveled edges and a printed white frame and sits right where the 3 o'clock marker would have been. I can't really say the same for the 42mm version, as it appears to have cut corners by reusing the same size date wheel on a larger dial, putting it in a rather awkward position. Definitely not the end of the world, but the 38mm has it down much better. Lume on this watch is, well, present. Often criticized for being poor, I would say it is just about usable at best. Although it is using Super Luminova applied to the syringe hands and hour markers, it is surprisingly dim and does leave you wishing for more. Powering the watch is the H10 movement. Now, being part of the Swatch group gives Hamilton access to the proven ETA selection of movements at a lower cost, and the H10 is basically a lightly decorated ETA C07 movement with a custom Hamilton rotor. Older models of the Khaki Field Auto were supplied with the popular ETA 2824-2 movement, but this has since been replaced by their latest revision, the ETA C07.611. This movement is yet another controversial upgrade, where ETA appears to have upgraded their 2824-2 by introducing changes and modifications that some might actually consider a downgrade of the original design. The C07 basically doubled the power reserve to 80 hours, in part by reducing the bitrate from 28,800 beats per hour down to 21,600 beats per hour. It also introduced a new escapement design that requires special laser equipment to regulate, making it nearly impossible to self-regulate without the new equipment. The advantage of doing all this, however, is that you get a factory-regulated movement that maintains its accuracy much better than the previous design. At this point, it is entirely personal taste whether you prefer a higher bit rate or a longer power reserve and the ability to regulate the movement yourself. In any case, Hamilton isn't selling any more 2824-2 based watches, so you are going to have to either go used or search around for fast depleting new old stock if you prefer that older movement. I personally don't mind it either way, and I am getting a very consistent +8 seconds per day on mine, which I am pretty satisfied with. The Khaki Field Auto comes on either a stainless steel bracelet or a leather strap. I actually went through quite some effort to obtain mine on the bracelet, literally driving from one end of the island to the other as they were somehow in short supply at the time, pandemic style. From far, the bracelet looks like a 3-link style design. However, if you look closer, the middle links are actually split right down the middle, making it very reminiscent of the old style hollow link bracelets. Of course, because of this, not everyone is a fan of this design, which tends to be another common point of criticism. I was skeptical at first too, but I did want to get the full experience of this bracelet, and I've lived to tell the tale. Looks aside, what Hamilton has achieved with this 4-link design is a very comfortable and supple feeling bracelet. This bracelet really drapes and forms over your wrist just because of how supple it is. Together with the lightweight and slim profile of the watch, this is easily one of the most comfortable watches that I've ever worn. Even just placing it on the table, you can see how the bracelet melts into itself. We also get a fully milled clasp, which even after the price increases this year is still a pretty good value in my opinion. Unfortunately, this clasp is also polished like the bezel, and it is a huge scratch magnet. Over time though, the scratches do accumulate enough and become part of the character of the watch. Again, if you are into that sort of thing. So why is this watch a grail of mine? Or just basically a must-have in my collection? Well, for one, I really love its history and where it was derived from. But what really does it for me is just how fit for purpose this watch is, while also looking pretty dressy at the same time. Obviously not to be compared with a G-Shock, but for an automatic watch, it really handles rough work and activity like the marketing suggests, and it does so in style. The quality of the watch is also really impressive even after the price increases in my opinion. Yes, you could get a Seiko or an Orient for quite a bit less, but to get one of those with a comparable level of finishing and movement quality, you'd also be paying very close to what the Hamilton costs, if not more. The Hamilton Khaki Field 38 is a very versatile watch that could easily form a one-watch collection, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone looking for a watch that can be worn almost anywhere at any time. And that wraps it up for this review. If you liked it and would like to see more like it, please give me a like and subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next one.